There's a lot of mystics on the internet. Shout out and much love, you crazy fools, that could use dusting off a textbook or two, warmly, without judgment. And secondarily, there are certainly a lot of scholars in academia who would be well served by eating a mushroom. So I'm trying to bridge those two worlds. I'm Bob Peck, and this is Karmic Relief.
My background is in documentary film and comparative religion. I wrote a book called Original Sin is a Lie, How Spirituality Defies Dogma and Reveals Our True Self.
It's an interview show where I talk to spiritual teachers, activists, scholars, people that live within these traditions and also appreciate the overlap. What happens when you start to get activated internally, that makes you activated in a compassionate way in the world. I'm thrilled to be talking to fantastic, inspiring human beings. I have to do much less work, which is nice because I'm just asking them questions about their story. It's a life hack.
Hi.
I hope you'll enjoy these explorations, these really excavations, in the ones I've filmed so far. They've all been really beautiful and deep and lighthearted. So please enjoy Karmic Relief. I'm Bob Peck. I wrote Original Sin is a Lie, and now I'm asking a bunch of questions to intelligent, compassionate humans. Today's podcast is with Justin Wren. He is a MMA fighter, and he's a humanitarian. He has an unbelievable charity called Fight for the Forgotten. He has a great book on it and his story called Fight for the Forgotten. I'm thrilled to know him. He lives in Austin, and he's been on Joe Rogan 10 times. So if you want to know more from Justin after this episode, check him out on Joe. He's also just a giant Viking bear hug sweetheart. And I'm thrilled to get to shine a light on his story. Hopefully we can all learn from coming from a really dark place and transmuting that into something really beautiful. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Karmic Relief. This is Bob Peck. I'm here with MMA star, humanitarian, all-around nice guy, Viking, here in Austin, Texas, with Justin Wren. What's up, Justin?
Hey, I'm grateful to be here with you, Bob. I love you, man. I really do.
It's such a pleasure, J-Dub. Sending love right back to you, man. Your book, which, by the way, is fantastic, Fight for the Forgotten, is Justin Wren's story, how a mixed martial artist stopped fighting for himself and started fighting for others. Chapter 1 is Burying Andy Bo.
Yeah, it's heavy.
You jump right in. You had this extremely pivotal moment in Africa, in the jungle, after years of a successful fighting career, challenging existential recovery journey, and you're digging a grave in the middle of Africa. I mean, it's pretty wild. And I was doing research on you all week, and we've known each other for about a year or so now, and I'm doing research on you, and you have a fever at your TEDx talk, which the comments confirmed that's because you had malaria and you didn't know it at the time.
Yeah. I had 103-degree fever the morning of. Actually, I think it was backstage before I went out and gave the TEDx talk. And so I knew I was sick the day before, and we were supposed to do rehearsals and run-throughs and give the actual speech. And I got up there for my time, and I literally couldn't remember it because my fever was so high. And so what they allowed me to do, thankfully, was have more slides that would keep me on point. And because I worked on this thing for like 6 months or more, and I had a coach for it, and we would do a Zoom about it, or I think maybe at the time it was Skype. And this was in the UK, Warwick University, and beautiful campus. And then whenever I got there, I felt super prepared, and then I got hit like a Mack truck. And so we put in a video, which isn't common for TED Talks, and but it was still a great experience. I was just thinking behind the scenes, before a fight, you have to get the job done, and you might have an injury, and you still have to fight, unless it's something serious, right? But I didn't know but they told me I had the flu. And so I was like, I promise it feels like malaria. They're like, well,
Because you had it before.
I had it before, right? And so luckily, though, right after the TEDx talk, I was going back to Africa, and I was going to Congo, but I stayed in Uganda for a bit to recover and get treated for malaria. And I mean, it was like talk, go get on the plane the next morning and go to Africa, where they actually knew how to treat malaria.
Because they didn't know in the UK.
No, they don't have it there.
Cases of malaria.
Yeah,
they don't have malaria specialists in Warwick.
My mom, when I had malaria the first time, found out about it on Thanksgiving Day. I would call her from time to time every few months from a sat phone in the middle of the forest. Kind of like we're sitting by trees right now for those listening. And you'd have to wait for a satellite to come through the canopy of the rainforest and time it right and aim whatever the antenna up there. And so when I talked to her with malaria, I think lost 33 pounds in 5 days. And I was vomiting red and green, which was blood and bile. 2 doctors thought I didn't have malaria. Well, the reason being was the quick test that they would use were expired by years. I think 2 or 3 years old. And we didn't know that until my guys went to the trash, pulled it out, saw that it was expired. One guy wanted to treat me for malaria, the night doctor. And when I say doctor, I was basically in a mud hut with 10 roofs. And
This is the first time.
yeah, this is the first time.
Yeah.
So I did kind of crawl out of that hut and called my mom, and she's like, come home, please, because American doctors, they can treat you. And I just thought, they don't know how to treat malaria. Like the people here get it all the time.
Right.
And so I decided to stay. But one of the reasons I actually decided to stay was the vision that I had. And I knew I had a vision that 100% came true. And so I was there for a reason. And that's what kept me there. And I did get evac'd out of Congo to Uganda that first time. And when I got there, they confirmed, I tested positive. And yeah, it was just gnarly, man. I had black water fever by that point, which I think still, if you Google that fact, they're getting better at treating that too. It's basically 25 to 50% of the people that get it die. And so I couldn't urinate for 5 days. Whenever I finally could, it was black, like pitch black. It was like black paint almost coming out.
How cliche is it for me to say, you faced many challengers, however...
Oh, you know what? I'll start something with hopefully a takeaway that people can have. When I look at my journey and what's taken 13 years to really build up, the success or the impact, life change and things like that, sustainability, looking at it from the starting point, I had no clue that this was possible to provide clean water to 52,000 people and counting.
It's incredible.
To see more than 1,800 people transition out of an actual life of slavery and into freedom. And a lot more stuff than that. But that has been so important. And so, I never knew that was possible. When I think about malaria, I was in Uganda that first time, and we had failed 5 months in a row trying to get one well. Now we have over 85 wells. And we had just failed and failed and failed. And I was basically a white belt well driller trying to teach other white belts how to drill wells. I was no expert and just had the heart for it. And Andy Bo was the reason we chose water first, because it was okay, if there's one thing, let's knock out the water crisis for my Pygmy family. But I told Papa why he was like a mentor to me and a father figure. He's a dean of the School of Community Development and teaches sustainability. I just told him, Papa, why I'm out of gas. I also think I need more training. We've had no success. Maybe I'll go home. And he told me, if you leave now without a single well, this whole team we've built is going to lose hope. And one of the things he said that kept me there was this Swahili proverb, which was, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try to sleep in a closed room with a mosquito. And it's tongue-in-cheek, and it's funny, but
So real.
yeah, whenever you lost almost your life to malaria, to a mosquito-borne parasite, to something that's microscopic inside of that mosquito. And I thought about, wow, I fought guys 6'7", 6'8".
I was going to say heavyweight.
6'10".
The size of the individual matters
Yeah.
quite a bit in
Yeah.
your domain.
Uh-huh.
Your
And those
craft.
big, tall guys, I luckily, fortunately, gratefully, beat those guys in the first round. Didn't look beat up after the fight, but something so small inside of that mosquito almost took my life. So I guess the takeaway is how much more of a difference can we make in the lives of others? More than a mosquito, right?
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, you're a walking example of the fact that you can actually be of service to other human beings. And so I deeply honor your work and everything you've built. And I think,
Thank you.
I want to, you're more than welcome. I want to talk about at the Big Pygmy, obviously, because that's become such a huge part of your life. And it's what gets you excited. You just showed me a pygmy chair in your house. But
You got to sit on it. The first person to sit on it in 3, 4, 5 years.
it ain't too bad.
It's basically just 2 sticks.
They're
the
pretty
ones behind
ingenuitive,
us.
those pygmies. You were on The Ultimate Fighter when you were 19.
Yeah. Well, I started fighting professionally at 19.
Oh,
and
sorry.
I
Ultimate
was on
Fighter 21. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And you wanted to start that was your first love.
Yeah, it was my childhood dream. And
Did you watch Bruce Lee movies, or what got you into it initially?
Uniquely, I was buying black belt magazines with Bruce Lee on it, with Chuck Norris on it when I was 13.
Sick.
And at the time, I was
Enter the
getting
Dragon
very
legend.
And I didn't think I could be one of those guys, but I was getting incredibly heavily bullied.
Yeah.
And so from 3rd grade to 8th grade, really bullied. And
were you this size?
I was a big kid, but I was more wide,
Got
right?
it.
I wasn't tall yet.
Got it.
And I didn't have a growth spurt till freshman, maybe sophomore year.
Yeah.
And then I started to fill out and started wrestling. And the reason I chose wrestling was because I wanted to do MMA. After this huge bullying moment in my life, basically I went to my middle school crush's birthday party. And I went all out. It was a Dr. Pepper themed birthday party. Texas is big on Dr. Pepper.
Yes.
I found out
For
it's
some
kind
reason.
of a subculture here.
Yeah, yeah.
And her dad worked there. He was an executive there. They had a Dr. Pepper Dublin. Dr. Pepper, you know Dublin Dr. Pepper?
No.
There's Dublin, Texas, and it's kind of like Mexican. What Mexican Coke is, that's Dublin Dr. Pepper.
Oh.
They do it with the
that's good
Imperial,
shit.
Imperial cane sugar. I think it's now out of business, but then it was big, and they had a Dublin Dr.
This is
Pepper
not an ad.
machine in their house. No, it's not an ad. But it was cool to think about, okay, people are talking about what characters are going to go as, what superheroes, Marvel characters. Looking back, being the Viking in the UFC, I should have gone as Thor, but I didn't. And the reason was because I really wanted to catch her eye and impress her and know things about her. And she loved Optimus Prime from the Transformer movies and show. And so I wanted to go as her favorite Transformer, which was Optimus Prime, but Dr. Pepper themed. So Dr. Optimus Pepper. And so I had a 24-pack on my head, a chest plate, a shield, a sword. I went all out. My mom helped me with some duct tape. We lived in the country, Crowley, Texas, outside Fort Worth. And so she was like, Jennifer's going to love this. And we get to the party. And when the door opens, her grandmother Mimi's like, Jennifer's going to love this. And rumors at school were true. I pushed
Jennifer
the
didn't
button.
love it.
No. But I got one of those Dublin Dr. Peppers in my hand. I went to the backyard, and when the door opened, I was hit with flashes of light. And as my eyes adjusted, I heard the sound of laughter. And when I looked at them, no one was dressed up, just me. And I was crushed by my middle school crush, saying, I can't believe you thought you were good enough to come to my party. And a guy named Tyler said, you're worthless. And I felt worthless, didn't feel good enough. And then the guy that orchestrated the whole thing and premeditated it and got everyone in on it said, you should just kill yourself. And I don't know that I've ever shared this part, but I think it hit different or hit heavier because we were all in 7th grade the year before, and we lost a student named Landon to suicide. We all attended his funeral or his wake, his mass, or his memorial. And so if they're telling me that, then maybe I really should do that. If that makes any sense. It doesn't, but it does when you're 13 and you believe the things people say about you.
Sure. If that's your friend group, and that's your community.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even my friend group, so I thought, I really remember having the invitation in my hands thinking like, oh, the prize was a Dr. Pepper gumball machine with Dr. Pepper flavored gumballs. That's how vividly I remember this.
Wow, yeah.
And so I wanted to win the prize. I wanted to win the girl. I wanted to go all out. Once I was like, okay, I'm really invited to this thing. So anyways, about a month later, maybe 2 months later, my parents took me out of that school. I remember I went to this flea market called Trader's Village, and it's huge. And they sell junk. They sell stolen car parts. They sell... I went to a store that was selling iguanas and flying squirrels. And anyways, I found this used VHS tape slot. And I remember finding the UFC, like 2 through 11 or something like that. It was missing the first one where Hoist Gracie won that one. I think he won the second one too. But and I was just mesmerized. I thought, these guys don't get bullied. And
right.
If I can do that, if I could transform into that, then life will be different. And maybe I won't be the laughing stock of the party. Maybe I'll be a real invitee and get to go.
Well, I'm sure that the Pygmies are grateful for Jennifer and Tyler creating this force of nature who has... You would never accept the adjective single-handedly because it's a team and it's a collective effort. But you're a big damn part of reviving an entire culture of human beings in Africa. That's a really profound story. And I also, in addition to Fight for the Forgotten, which is your work in Africa, which we're going to get to and cover in great detail, you continue to be an anti-bullying advocate here in the States. You guys have an anti-bullying curriculum.
We did. We kind of, I wouldn't say rebranded, restructured. We let that fly on its own 2 wings.
Okay.
And so that's still being ran. It's called Heroes in Waiting, and it's great. And 2 of the people I love most in this world run it. And we helped develop that curriculum, and it's been in over 100 schools, over 100 martial arts academies. And we spoke to tens of thousands of students in the U.S., and I was part of that. And I will still do that. Like, I'll still speak at schools whenever school says something's going on and they need an anti-bullying speaker. I'll go share my story.
What are some of the key takeaways? I mean, is it for teachers and students and kind of all the above?
It's mostly for the bystander because...
Oh, okay. Hey, jump in here.
Yeah. A lot of people think that they're not in a powerful position.
Yeah.
Obviously,
That's
if you're a
not
bystander, laughing or snickering or whatever, like you're part of it. But a lot of people think they're innocent bystander whenever they are witnessing it or, and within eyesight or hearing distance, but not actively participating. Well, you are an active participant, even if it's happening and you do nothing. So you're given a choice to do something or do nothing.
Yeah.
And the best thing you can do is say, hey, that's not kind. And it normally stops it within like the first 10 seconds of someone actually intervening.
Yeah, that's
and
beautiful.
That's why it's called Heroes in Waiting.
Now's your moment. You're seeing...
It's your opportunity to make a difference.
You're seeing a kid get bullied. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Are you going to Instagram story it?
Yeah, exactly.
Or are you going to stand up?
Yeah. One of the young men I love most in my life, he's been in my life since he was 12 and he's 17 now, is Raiden. And he was in Oklahoma, 20 minutes from where I used to live. And people sent me the Instagram and Snapchats and screen recorded it. And there was 8 people in the bathroom when he was getting pummeled at the urinal. This kid has autism and deaf in his right ear. And no one did anything except laugh and video. And so the next day at the school bus stop, he was beat up by 4 people, was jumped. And they were laughing while he was basically not even defending himself, just getting pummeled in the stomach, in the head, in the back of the head. taking kicks and punches, and I got it. And the next morning, I took him to a ringside doctor that can diagnose concussions, and he had
They know
one.
this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And so, yeah, we got to rally alongside him, and we wanted to create. I wanted to create a pattern interrupt for him, and so I called on some of my friends and said we're going to do something for him, and we got to go to L.A. Teddy Atlas flew us to L.A. so we could take him to Disneyland. Teddy Atlas was like a Hall of Fame boxing coach and commentator.
Wow.
Has a foundation, and he saw it, sent us. My friend A.J. Buckley with CBS SEAL Team, and he was in CSI and a bunch of other stuff, was like, hey, why don't we have him come be a Navy SEAL for a day and start some of the scenes of the TV show? And everyone rallied around him. The LA Rams invited us on the sidelines for a game because one of their players had been, one of their offensive linemen had been severely bullied. Laird and Gabby Hamilton helped us set up, Gabby Reese helped us set up like with some world champion surfers going out surfing in Malibu.
That's incredible. Oh my God.
And it wasn't about like the fireworks of it.
Yeah.
It was about like rallying around this kid and loving him and letting him know like not everyone's like what happened to him.
Yeah.
And he's got support and he's loved. And then after that, continuing to mentor him and love on him and go see him and have him down here to Austin and get in the ring with him. He's doing jiu-jitsu now and he's leveling up, and no one's picking on him now.
It's incredible. That's so touching. It's really, really, really profound. And I mean, it's because you've gone through that. It's like, you've become an ambassador not for the photo op. I mean, that's a really big theme, I think, in you. What I know about you and your work is like, you're not doing this for the pageantry. Like you've experienced the existential lows of being bullied, of your recovery journey, of seeing the travails of the Pygmy people. You're not interested in anything around you're not doing it for the likes, You're using Instagram because you're getting the message out on these programs and these people. But, you're familiar enough with kind of my work in terms of like mystic philosophy and like, it's all this stuff is just sand through the fingers,
Well, when it came to Raiden specifically, and even the Pygmy people, there's a quote that can sound cliche, but I just remember I'd heard it before. And then whenever I got sent that stuff with Raiden, I was like, it just clicked. Be the person you needed when you were 12 years old. And I was like, whoa, this is that chance. This is that opportunity. And I think being able to connect with the Pygmy people, whenever I first met them and spent a few weeks with them and was getting ready to leave, the chief looked me dead in the eyes and said, everyone else calls us the forest people, but we call ourselves the forgotten. We don't have a voice. Can you help us have one? And so after burying Andy Bo, which is a much longer story, but they named me Efeosa, which means the man who loves us. And that was by the Efe Pygmy people. And then they nicknamed me and named me Mabuti Mangbo, which means the big pygmy. And so because I had both those names.
You are the largest pygmy
Yeah.
that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Their average height's 4'6" or 4'7" for the men. At most, they normally weigh 100 pounds. And yeah, so I guess I am the big pygmy. Ooh yeah, ayo! That's some of their calls.
Well, you've been doing this 17 years. 18.
Yeah, 13.
Oh, 13. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm 36, and I first went to.
This isn't coming out till 2027.
Oh, okay,
so
great, awesome.
Perfect.
But yeah, whenever I first started thinking about an actual comeback to fighting, and
yeah, just for most people that use the internet or might have come across Justin Wren. He's been on Joe Rogan 27 times. He's on a lot of material. You can watch his TEDx talk where he has a malaria fever. But for those that don't know, so you had this bullying experience. You got into UFC or MMA? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, both.
Okay, both.
MMA is the sport, and UFC's the league.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's the football and NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am a philosopher. I'm a writer. I don't know
No, you're good.
the difference until just now, but thank
I
you.
don't know if my mom still knows the difference.
My
My grandma definitely does. Great grandma, she's passed, but she would tell me before my fights, Justin, now I don't want you grabbing that chair and hitting anybody with it when you're in there wrestling, and don't you cuss on that microphone.
Don't you smell what the Rock is cooking?
Yeah.
You start fighting.
Yeah.
You go on your first professional fight. You said 19.
Yeah.
Ultimate Fighter, which is a television show.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
It was intense. You're living with your roommates and you're training with your roommates, and then you fight your roommates.
So it's a Big Brother kind of like Real World type show?
Yeah, except for you fight each
Kind
other.
There's one unique characteristic, however.
One unique characteristic is you're all professionals, and you eat at
Beating
the
each
breakfast
other
table, and later you go to war, and so or to battle. And it was unique because most people don't know this, and I don't even know if it's in the book, but I snuck in OxyContin, and but I literally snuck in OxyContin. I was already an addict before I ever started fighting. And reason being, I lived at the Olympic Training Center. I'd won a couple national championships in wrestling. And when I got into wrestling...
Athletes are using drugs?
Yeah, absolutely. All sorts. Mine weren't performance enhancing. And
Performance decreasing,
yes,
actually.
absolutely, yeah. And I had a surgery. I wrestled an Olympic bronze medalist, world champion, and we just had a freak accident. It was a freak fall, and when my arm posted, it snapped, and I broke it, dislocated it, tore the ulnar collateral ligament in my elbow, severed it, and had nerve damage, and that's why I won't hold the mic in my right hand for too long, because my 3 fingers will go numb and just go limp. This is 2005. We didn't know nearly as much about OxyContin as we do now. And...
As a painkiller.
Yeah, or
it'll
non-addictive.
make you feel better.
It's the best
Oh,
one
it's
out
non-addictive.
there. Non-addictive, least
Not the
addictive.
case.
That's what they would call it. And I had 3 different doctors giving it to me like candy, or, here's 90 for this month. Here's 120 for this month. Here's 120 for this month. So a lot of access with no real oversight. And so I became hooked and didn't know if my fighting career would even ever develop, because I had the one thing that stood out was a doctor saying you have a 30% chance to ever compete again. And so that's the childhood dream.
From those injuries.
Yeah, from the injury. And but it did happen, and I took my first few fights, and those were wild stories, but I ended up winning and wasn't even supposed to be there. The first 2 I was supposed to be the coach. And one time my guy had a staph infection. The next time my guy I was coaching, I was the wrestling coach. I hadn't even worn MMA gloves. And
you know what? We got a big guy over here on the bench, actually.
Yeah, actually, I went I was the guy selected to go tell the promoter that he wasn't coming, and he was in the hospital. They thought the staph infection was so deep, it was in his femur bone, and they thought they might have to amputate.
Jeez.
And so I go to the weigh-ins. I tell him he's not coming. The promoter had seen me. Well, the opponent starts talking trash. He ended up in the hospital one night early. I was going to send him there anyways. He's not even probably really in the hospital. He's a coward. Different stuff like that. So the promoter...
There's some rude guys out here on in the ring.
Yeah, well, most are super respectful, but
Right.
whenever you've trained for 10, 12 weeks for one opponent and you've been studying him, and then it doesn't happen and he doesn't even show up,
Sure.
There's questions. And
Decent amount of testosterone flowing as well.
exactly. Yeah. And so the promoter said, hey, if you take him down, he had seen me wrestle, and he's like, if you take him down, you dominate this guy. If you stay standing, he's going to knock you out. He owns a kickboxing gym, lived in Thailand, different stuff. I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? Never fought. He goes, I'm giving you an opportunity. I'm going to pay you. And I was like, okay, yes. And but it was the childhood dream. The thing that was really tough was whenever the dream became a reality and I was a quote-unquote, maybe some would say a champion on the outside, I was completely broken on the inside. And so I remember getting my hand raised and thinking, so what? And is this it? Is that all? Like, there's got to be something more. but not knowing what that is and having my entire identity wrapped in that and not knowing who I was, I don't know, I would say if I was, without it, like that doesn't even make sense, but it was, who would I be if I didn't have this thing? Because after the Ultimate Fighter TV show, it blew up. It was the largest season in its history, and 6.8 million people on average watched it. So going to the grocery store, the guy doing the rotisserie chickens, like running out to take a picture with me real quick. And in the aisles, like someone snapping a picture of me without even like my knowledge, and then seeing it happen, be like, would you rather get in this picture? Like, here, we'll take a selfie, you know? And life was just different, but like I'm fighting this addiction. And the way I would explain addiction, where it got to for me twice, was there's a move in MMA called a rear naked choke. It's where the opponent gets on your back, pins your legs down, pins your arms down, and has his two arms wrapped around your neck, strangling you. And you have to have your two arms to fight his one hand, right? It's a 2-on-1, or you have no shot of getting out of it. Sometimes in MMA, very rarely, will a guy get one arm pinned where now his two arms are fighting your one hand, and you don't get out of that. But one time in history, it's a teammate of mine in jiu-jitsu, has been able to pin both arms down in something called a body triangle, where that it was his two arms on that guy's one or neck, right? And that might not make sense.
It's
with
a
the
domination.
technical. It's an absolute either checkmate. You're done.
Yeah,
You're gonna wave the white flag. It's either tap or nap, like you're going to sleep. And he didn't even have his two arms to tap, right? Well, that's how I felt. Now, all day, every day was, I can't even like do anything to fight this thing anymore. It's so big. I've tried everything I thought. So there's 2 times of suicide attempts, and one of them, I took a one-way ticket to Mexico and had no intention of coming back. Flew to Cancun, drove down to kind of the Tulum area, and I remember I took 80 Oxycontins, which is almost equivalent to 3 prescription bottles, the normal prescription bottles, and took like 5 Xanax, 2 milligrams, which is I think the strongest dose of them. And people might normally take like a quarter of one of those things, where that's the normal prescription. It's like 0.25. I took like 5 2 milligrams, and so probably equivalent to like 20 of the normal ones. I was trying to stop my heart, and I drank a handle of tequila, and I just knew I fell back. I sat down on the bed.
Kept you here.
It was wild,
made
man.
it out of that.
I did it around noon, and
3 bottles of Oxy?
Basically, yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, almost. And whenever I fell back, it was over 400 milligrams of Oxy, which is wild.
And you had already had a belt at this point?
No, so I won national championships in wrestling.
Won national championships.
And I had been dominant in many ways. I never was a world champion in MMA.
You had seen the futility of winning.
Yeah, and losing. Like I was 15-2 professionally as an MMA fighter, and so there was ups and downs, and
a lot of ups.
Yep, and the highs were really high.
A lot of confusion around what am I really doing?
Yeah, well, I remember getting my hand raised as the main event at the Hard Rock in Las Vegas. Like that should be like a dream fight for someone.
Sure.
And me getting my hand raised was the most absolutely joyless experience of my life. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. Went back to the hotel alone, turned off the lights, took some pills and drank, and just tried to get to sleep and forget it all. And so with the suicide attempt in Mexico, I woke up at around 6 a.m. the next morning to a gasp. It was like a and I just thought, holy shit, I'm alive. And like, is it okay to cuss on the show? It's like, fuck, I'm still here. And then thinking, like, I was discombobulated or whatever you say. I was shook up, and my heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. It was just pounding, and I couldn't get into the water fast enough. And I wanted my toes in the sand. I wanted my knees in the wake, and to feel the water over me.
Instinctual call to get grounded, and
And so I went out there, and my eyes are closed, and I smell the salt water, and I feel the waves pushing me back. And I just remember it felt like wave after wave, shame after shame was coming over me. And it was a wave would hit, and the shame I would think, like, what am I doing to my mom? Another wave would come over me, and I would think, someone was going to find me. How selfish. You're a coward. What would that have done to them?
Just next guilty thoughts. Guilty thought. Yeah.
And then something shifted, because I remember, maybe it's because we're sitting by the water, but I can almost smell the salt, and I remember a tear dropped down my cheek. My eyes are closed. I'm just full of shame, and I taste the salt from my tear, and I'm there, and something outside of myself, whether we want to say higher self or God or the universe, the source of love, creator, something whispered to my soul when my heart's beating out of my chest, be grateful for that beating heart in your chest. And I think that, and then be grateful for that breath in your lungs. And I take a deep breath, and I think, I'm grateful for the breath in my lungs. And my eyes are still closed, and something like a whisper in the soul says, open your eyes. And right when I opened my eyes, the sun appeared over the horizon, and I watched the most, and I don't use this word lightly, I don't really use this word, but it was majestic. The most majestic sunrise of my entire life appears before my eyes, and it's like a master painter painting his masterpiece right in front of me. And I'm like, whoa, this happens every day, twice a day, all over the world for all of us. Like, you got to be kidding me. This is incredible. And I just sat there and cried in the water. And I remember thinking, like, I also had outside people and calls and emails of, are you alive? Are you still here? Where are you at? Like, things like that. But it was in that moment I was like, I got to get help. And I've got to do something about this. And thinking like a fighter goes into fight camp to prepare for an opponent and gets the tools and tactics and techniques and coaching, right, from the best in the world. The bigger the opponent, the more you need. And I had never taken it seriously, and I needed to. And but I also am so grateful, because going to treatment, first time I went, it was more of a scared straight style place. That was like cussing at you and, you fake as F mother effer, you piece of shit.
Boot camp.
Yeah. And I chose that because I wanted fight camp. And I was one of two guys that made it 90 days. and I was the only one not court ordered there. And people were hopping the fence and leaving with their middle fingers in the air. And the second time, though, and it was after the suicide attempt, I was like, I need something different. And I went to this place that was all about infinite love. And it sounds cheesy a bit, but it was so good, man, because it was there. I learned you got to love yourself like your life depends on it. Why? Because it effing does. For a guy like me, it does. And then it's when it comes to, that was for depression, but when it came to addiction, you gotta face it all and feel it all, because that's where the magic happens. That's where the magic happens. Instead of running from it, because it's going to catch up to you. And yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I just want to listen to Justin talk. What a profound story. I'm still seeing that sun come up on the Tulum coastline and kind of vicariously experiencing some of that sense of gratitude and kind of it to me it has a kind of a Thich Nhat Hanh flavor of like you look into a flower and you can see the smile of every being, you know, with that level of presence and gratitude that we just kind of we just drudge on through our days and have to go to the laundry and have to do, you know, go to the post office and pay our taxes, and we just get caught up in like the drudgery, and there's this real, I mean, and even worse than those things are fine, and that's part of the zen of it, I guess, too, in a sense, but, you know, to your point of like having these, what are supposed to be high highs, you know, which obviously are worth striving for, and it's okay to have ambition, and ambition I think is mostly good, but if it becomes, you know, it's kind of an idol worship thing, right? Worshipping the trophy that you try to obtain, you know, you saw through that.
Yeah, I would say since that moment in the water, gratitude has truly been I know it's not a secret weapon for anybody, but whenever I get into the drudgery zone, one of the things to get me back in like the desire zone of like the desire to keep living, the desire to put love and compassion in action, the desire to fight for the forgotten, the desire to build better lives, the desire to like actually make a meaningful impact, it always comes from a place of gratitude. And me, it's still a daily practice. I'm grateful for the breath in my lungs. Big deep breath when I wake up in the morning, and I will tap my chest. I'm grateful for the beating heart in my chest, and I'm grateful to be alive. And because I am living in the bonus rounds for a guy that almost died of malaria or almost died from his own hand twice. It's like now everything else is gravy. Like it's the bonus rounds,
baby.
And it will also allow me to do things that maybe I wouldn't have done before.
It's supercharged you for the rest of the incarnation.
Yeah, I will leave stuff that is no longer serving me, or I will say it will confuse people like crazy whenever I leave fighting on a winning streak. To go where? To do what? And I'll be called a waste of talent by some people that love me and that I really want their approval. And you know, and then I'll be able to be grateful and be like, it's okay. They don't understand right now, and this is what I've got to do.
Right.
And
so walk us through that, Jay. You have this recovery journey, which I think is its own podcast episode. By the way, listen to Joe Rogan number 112. I don't know what it is. 1012 for Justin's recovery episode, and you know, feel free to bring up more moments from that too if you find it useful. What kind of the connective moment in terms of getting to fight for the forgotten is towards the end of your recovery journey, you start doing mission trips, and also shout out to Christian missionaries.
Yeah, sure.
As the author of Original Sin is a Lie, I love good Christians.
Yeah.
I love serviceful Christians. You know, Jesus tells us to feed the hungry, to visit those in prison. What you do for the least of these, you do for me. It's a crucial teaching by the Avatar of Nazareth, and there are real Christians that live that, and I honor them. And that was who introduced you to doing much needed work in another continent.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. Basically you stumble into a situation because you weren't there to save the Pygmies. You're doing other work in Africa, and you discover an inherent problem.
Yeah, so I joined this group that was basically doing missions and good work and volunteering, and it was this like 55-day program, and I thought, this will be cool. I stepped away from fighting for a year to kind of rebuild my life and the recovery, and I'll do this. I'll be around some good young people wanting to make a difference. And before that, it started at a children's hospital, and I remember this dad invited me to the Colorado Children's Hospital because his son had a traumatic brain injury, and they were fight fans, and he was 12. His name was Bryce, and I go visit, and this is really raw after like the downward spiral that was actually a free fall and hitting rock bottom. So I said, I'll go do that. And I didn't know what I'd say or what I'd do, but he asked if I'd come take a picture with his son. So I said yes. When I got there, Bryce didn't even know I was in the room, right? All he could do was moan in agony. It was they didn't know if he'd walk again, talk again, eat again on his own. So it messed me up. And it was awkward to get down on a knee by his hospital bed and take a picture with a kid that isn't smiling, right? But is it called writhing in pain? Like just, so.
It almost felt, which is, again, unlike you, part of the pageantry thing, which is
I mean, it
not
was
what you're doing it for. You were, honestly, you were probably bringing some solace to the dad.
Yeah, the dad was a fight
a
fan.
lot that this guy,
to his brother, to his mother.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this: it was a moment of clarity for me because the chaplain, the pastor that was there, saw me welling up with tears in my eyes when I walked out. He said, "Hey, are you okay?" And we had this conversation, and then I felt the opportunity. Well, it might have sounded selfish because I said, "What was that about?" Like, he's not going to remember I was there. Like, what was I doing here? And he said, "Hey, stop that. Stop being selfish. You did a good thing today. You should do it more." And it was this it was basically the start of the journey.
Advice.
Yeah. It was basically the start of the journey. I was like, oh, shit. And the nurse saw us having this interaction, and she had been in the room, and she had come to say thank you to me, and which I didn't need, but she handed me a pamphlet, and it was to be a volunteer. And so I did that. I went through this night school for, I think, 2 weeks straight, and then it would be 3 days a week, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week at the Colorado Children's Hospital in the oncology unit. And then that kind of snowballed to the Denver Rescue Mission and to another place, and then I ended up on this.
You look up, and all of a sudden you're constantly doing this.
I mean, I did realize, like, hey, and this goes into the story of how I got to Africa, like, hey, volunteering doesn't pay the bills.
Right.
And I'm broke as a joke, and it was like not an eviction notice, but it was like an eviction warning. And I was like, oh man,
I've got
what
those.
I'm like, what am I doing?
Oh, it's only yellow? It's not pink yet?
It's pink, orange. I'm partially colorblind. So it was this moment where I'm like, okay, what do I do? I'm a fighter. This is what I do. And all I've been doing is volunteering for 10 months.
Decent amount of money on the ring.
Yeah, but not enough to not get a paycheck for 10, 11 months, right? And so I said a prayer, and it was, God, what do you want me to do with my life? And not thinking the clouds would part or a voice would come or anything like that. But have you been to the Sphere in Vegas? Dude, it is incredible. And it's like 360 screens all around you and over your head, and you can watch this movie called Postcards from Earth, and it takes you through like world, like beautiful landscapes, but also like Baraka cultures
kind of vibe.
Yeah, like cultures, and it's one of the best things made, man. And I teared up, and Amy loved it. And anyways, the reason I bring that up is it was like the Sphere dropped around me when I said that prayer, and I had this vision, and I was walking in the rainforest, and I'm clearing vines and thickets out of the way, and I keep walking down this footpath, and I hear drumming, and I keep walking down this footpath, and I hear singing, a very distinct singing, and I come in and to the clearing, and I see these twig and leaf huts, and I it blew me away. I see this guy that's emaciated. I can count all his ribs. He's coughing. I know that he's hungry, thirsty, poor, sick, oppressed, and enslaved. I knew that, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper afterwards. And I was like, what was that? I felt crazy. I was crying for these people. I didn't know who they were, where they were, anything about them. I cried a little puddle. Now when I say puddle, it's like a grandma-sized cookie or a silver dollar, right? But I never cried like that at any funeral. I never cried like that after any heartbreak. I didn't cry like that after I ran away from my middle school crush's birthday party and I ended up behind a Dairy Queen, like just throwing that stuff away. Like I felt a little nuts. Was that a psychedelic reactivation? Was that a psychotic break?
Mystical experience to me.
Yeah. But, sometimes this stuff comes off to people as like, what happened? Because even me in that moment, can that happen? Would it happen? How did it happen? Why did it happen?
Well, listeners of this podcast, if you're listening to Karmic Relief hosted by Bob Peck, this type of idea won't be preposterous to you. And if so, this might not be the pod for you. But we've talked about this a little bit, which is you were like basically pulled to this, I say this respectfully, fairly random corner of the world from where you were at the time, at least, to really help these people, which we're getting to. But it's, in my understanding of reincarnation and what the Hindus call the wheel of samsara, it's very possible that you were a pygmy in the back in a previous existence. You might have even been someone who took advantage of them in a previous existence. And so now you have this reparatory dharma in the current incarnation. And because this is pendulum land, this is the world where we're carrying the thing that we didn't heal until we replace it or release it or free it, liberate it in some capacity. And so I don't think you're crazy.
Yeah, thank you. But I felt like I was
occasionally,
crazy.
But
yeah. I felt like I was crazy for a little while. I say a little while. I thought I would never tell anyone this vision ever. And then 3 days later, I tell this guy because he's sharing his story and I'm around him and he did this like basic keynote speech and he lived with a Vanuatu tribe that invented bungee jumping. He lived with a Maasai tribe that hunts lions. He had done missions work and he had done humanitarian work.
Sounds like the right guy to tell that you just had a vision of drums in a rainforest.
Right? Yeah. So I end up telling him the vision. And I was scared to tell him the vision. But I tell him the vision and he cracks a smile. And I go, what? He goes, I know who they are. And I'm like, what? And he goes, they're the Pygmy people. And I said, who? He said, they're in the Congo Basin rainforest. And I was like, where? And he said, I'm going in 3 weeks. You're coming with me. And I was like, whoa. And then he started telling me more about it and the rebel groups there and the terrible things being done to a lot of people, but especially the Pygmy people. And then we got in his car, his truck, and started driving to his house to tell his wife. And he tells me that basically 3 days earlier, when I had this vision, he got notice that the rebels did something and the U.S. State Department said, don't go. And the next day his team canceled on him, 3 other people going with him. And then the day I told him the vision, his wife basically told him, Caleb, you're not going alone. If you don't get a sign, you're not going. And we get out and go in his house.
He needed a Viking at that moment.
We get out and we go in and she's pregnant. And she's got a toddler running around. And I feel like I can't tell her. And I start to tell her, and it was so crazy, man, because I tell her the vision. She looks at Caleb. Her name's Jess. And she goes, you got to take this guy. And then I start trying to back out, saying, can't we delay it? Can't we postpone it?
If the pregnant wife encourages the trip, it's done, baby.
Right? And I basically said, well, we can postpone it. We can delay it. Why don't we go next year when things calm down? And then they turned into like the best life coaches, spiritual guides, where they're basically saying things like, if you don't go, you'll never know. You always wonder what coulda, shoulda, woulda happened. And you had this vision. I'm already going. Things fell through. You had a sign. You're my sign. Like, we're going.
That's how it works.
Yeah. And so I couldn't really wiggle my way out. But then all of a sudden the curiosity was like, what if? Or what would happen? So, man, when we went, we took numerous planes. We had to find a pilot to fly us from Uganda to Congo. We got told no once or twice, and then we found someone that would, and then we land on a grass runway or dirt runway first, then a grass runway the second time, and we're literally flying in a circle over it, and people run out of their mud huts with machetes, and right at first it's like, oh, what's going on? And then it's like, oh, they didn't clear the grass yet. Like, that's how they mow the lawn. And they don't know when the last time a plane landed here was. And we had to find another place to land.
The machetes weren't for you.
No.
They were
It's
for the 4-foot-tall runway.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Exactly. And
That's
so
like
we
a
land.
Seinfeldian moment.
Right? Yeah. And the pilot's saying, I don't know if I have enough fuel. I can't refuel here, so we're going to have to turn back. So we buzz it, and he sees, oh, it's shady, it's iffy, but let's go for it. And we land, and it's the roughest landing I've ever had. And anyways, we get out. We drive for 4 to 6 hours. We sleep in a mud hut. I woke up to basically light, or when I woke up, the light coming through was from bullet holes. And it's like, where am I? Why are we here? We drive some more. We get on motorcycles through the rainforest for a couple hours. We hike. We go across a river with that we heard had crocodiles and hippos in it. You can kind of hear some of that stuff going on, at least the hippos. And we're in a dugout canoe by the Pygmy people that isn't big pygmy sized, right? Like it's just a log that they carved into, and it's almost taking on water, and it's attached to the Congo River, which is the deepest, most powerful river in all the world. And so it's like just pushing us downstream.
Oh my God.
And then you have to aim, let's say, left to end up way right? Like going against the current. And it was just wild, man. The current just ripped and tore through there. And so then we get out and we hike for about another 30, 45 minutes. And all of a sudden we're clearing vines. I have pictures. We're clearing vines and thickets out of the way. We keep walking, we hear drumming. We keep walking, we hear singing. We come into a clearing. The first guy we meet, he's coughing. You can count his ribs. He's emaciated, and you know that he's hungry and thirsty and poor and sick, oppressed, enslaved. Like, they start telling us that stuff. And, well, before they even tell us that stuff, I have to take a knee because I'm weak in the knees, because holy smokes, it is real. And it's so surreal that, like, I'm lightheaded and I'm literally spinning. And I take a knee, and Caleb's grabbing my trap saying, "This is your vision. This is your vision." And I'm like,
You're like,
what?
This is literally, I walked into a dream, actually.
Yeah. It's the deja vu times 1,000.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it wasn't like the vision, it was the vision.
I don't know what else to say to that. This is the vision.
Yeah. We stay there for, I think, a couple more weeks. And Slave Master would come up saying, "Here, what are you doing with our property? I own these people." Just like, whoa. Like, I thought that stuff ended in the 1800s or before or whatever.
Listen, buddy, there's the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln, brother.
Yeah. But people don't know that there's 40 million slaves or more on Earth today. That's more than ever in human history.
It's insane.
Seeing people that and hearing things that I almost don't even want to repeat. And
40 million?
Yeah, at
human
least.
beings.
Yeah, at least. And when it comes to the water crisis and me burying Andy Bo, people don't know that over 3 million people a year die of dirty water, and that 2 million are children under the age of 5. Like, I've been to at least 5 of those funerals. I've dug the graves. And
preventable.
Yeah, and the pills are $1.
Yeah.
And the shot, if it's too late in the game for the pills, the shot is $3. The shovel that I bought on numerous occasions is $6 or $8. The caskets are $30 and up, right?
So there's a cruel irony in that it's cheaper, actually. And it's cheaper to save the child.
Yeah, and I've had Slave Master tell me, Andy Bo, Slave Master, I was in the grave. I was about 4 foot deep into the grave, about chest height, whenever I asked the Slave Master why. And he said it was cheaper to bury him than to keep him alive. And I was holding the shovel. I said, "No, it's not. No, it's not." And so when I think about this story And what happened, I remember Caleb asked me, so what are you going to do? And I said, what am I going to do? Like, you brought me here. Like, this is your thing. And I'm a fighter. Like, what do you mean? He said, what are you going to do? You had a vision. And I go, I don't know, Caleb. And we're sitting here along Lake Austin, the Colorado River. And I told him the visual I have is trying to empty the ocean with an eyedropper. And is that ever going to work? And would anyone ever notice? Would I notice? Would they notice? Would it actually make a dent? And Caleb, again, almost like that pastor or chaplain, kind of stopped me in my tracks. He said, hey, stop that. Like, yes, it matters. Like, every single one of those drops represents a human heart, a person's soul, a person's life, a kid's smile. Look at that kid over there. And I looked over at the kid over there who was smiling and playing. And I was like, whoa. He goes, yeah. Every drop of help you can offer someone else matters. And I go, okay, Caleb, like, maybe I can ask for another sign. Like, I need something. And he got frustrated. I said, what do you mean? You had a vision. It came true. And I was like, I don't know. But if I get it, I'll dedicate my life to this. And the next day we were leaving, and the chief came up to us, and that's when he said, everyone else calls us the forest people. We call ourselves the forgotten. The thing that hit me so hard and why I was crying so much was I wrote down on a piece of paper, forgotten, underlined it after the vision. Hungry, thirsty, poor, sick, oppressed, enslaved. And then I met the people. And then he told me himself, they call us the forest people. We call ourselves the forgotten. That's where the name Fight for the Forgotten comes from. And he said, we don't have a voice. Can you? And Caleb was with me and Colin was with me, and he motioned at me, will you help us have one? Calling me out. And that's whenever I said verbally yes, but it was, I know my soul was like screaming yes, or like solidifying yes. And
this is the shamanic initiation.
Man, it was
this is
where
stepping through the portal.
That's why whenever I had malaria, I didn't come home. That's why whenever I didn't just bury Andy, but I buried a young kid named Babo. His aunt is the one that named me. Her name's Chabusiku. His mother was Macho. Grandfather Jelua. And said, they named me Efeosa. And I was trying to get a well in, and we failed before Babo died. And where that well was going to be became Babo's grave. And you talk about like a hard hit, a knockout punch, a sucker punch, a blindside, like something that's supposed to be a life-giving resource turns into a grave. Like, I cried, and my hands were already blistered trying to dig the well, and then it was blistered from digging more of the grave.
The amount of heartbreak that these human beings endure, not only just coming out of slavery, is beyond words.
Or still in it, yeah.
But I mean, I know there was a mother or a woman that you know well, who was on a lot of your footage, who buried 5 of her 7 children.
Yep.
From preventable waterborne illnesses. I mean, there's just like.
But whenever you see that video,
of these stories.
Yeah, Mama Mariamo changed my life. So she stands maybe 4 foot tall, weighs at most 80 pounds, lives in the forest among the Pygmy people, hunter-gatherers. And my life was fighting in Vegas, maybe the epitome of opulence and excess. And she's living perhaps the simplest of all human existence. Yet that tiny woman changed this big man's life. And I don't know. At the end of that video, you see her immense joy. I mean, we're dancing together, right? After all of that heartbreak, after all that loss, after all that grief, her being blind, having river blindness, which is caused by contaminated water and the black flies infested with parasites that surround it. And
the well, when the water comes out of the well, is very emotional.
Oh, yeah.
In the footage.
Oh, yeah. And you got to think
Symbolic and
for them.
practical and
Yeah,
all these
and
different.
I think about the healing powers of water. And we're looking at water now and sitting by the water.
Baptismal.
Yeah, and even for me, like having a rebirth in the water and experiencing the healing
Sure.
powers of water.
Back in Tulum.
And then going and seeing devastation without it. And then feeling like, okay, maybe we can be part of helping people get it. And having no tools to know how to do it. And going onto Google and literally, like anyone, I guess, would do, right? Go on Google, how do you drill a well? So finding howtodrillyourownwell.com or .org.
Let's just be really clear here. Fight for the Forgotten is your international nonprofit. You guys, like you said earlier, you have over 85 working water wells.
Yeah, working.
Which is extremely unique in terms of typically American NGOs, and not to be too judgmental here or egoic here, but a lot of the way that NGOs in Africa operate, non-governmental organizations, is that they come in, set up a thing, and then they leave. They do their photo op, and it's okay to call that out, not in an egoic way, but in an accountability way, to say, no, the right way to do it is to do it the way that Justin and the Fight for the Forgotten team is doing it, which is these guys are training. Not only are you establishing the wells and looking at the long term, but you guys are also training and being trained. It sounds like it's a very collaborative, mutual exchange of information process that allows these to work for a long period of time, and it's extremely unique in the NGO community. So I want to just make sure that we're clear.
Yeah, sometimes helping hurts, and it's because of toxic charity, and there's over 230,000 broken wells in Africa right now.
That is the craziest.
That's not millions, but billions of wasted charitable dollars. And what that does is it robs people of dignity and opportunity. The opportunity to do it for themselves, the opportunity to have buy-in and value it and take care of it and be part of maintaining it. And it takes jobs away from people locally, not having a local workforce that becomes the local solution to the local problems. And so by equipping them with the tools, educating with the knowledge, empowering them to be the change in their own community, like that creates hope. It creates long-term change. It does capacity building as a jargon word, where you're building the capacity of the local people to do more, to do better, and to parlay that into more change and sustainability. And so our focus is one it's a little tough. We don't do only water. We've transitioned.
Started with land.
Land, water, food.
Then food.
Yep.
And then jobs.
Yeah.
Right? And just basically having an entire ecosystem for the Pygmies.
Yeah.
Because when I like that we've kind of gone all over the place. I hope that's not been too confusing for the listeners. You initially, when you met the Pygmies, they were on less than an acre. I mean, they had no land. They were slaves.
No land that belonged to them. Even that acre, they were basically squatting on, that was like, quote unquote, given to them, but they could have been moved and evicted off of it at any time.
So the first thing you guys did was we need to get these guys some acres,
land,
baby.
Yeah. And we wanted to start with 20 or 30 acres of land and to do 2 water wells. And that has exploded into more than 3,000 acres of land. Amazing. And so we think for a happy, healthy, thriving community, not just a surviving community, which, yes, we want to make sure they survive first because their people group has dwindled and not had access to healthcare or been denied access to healthcare. That's why I buried Andubo, really. He was denied hospital treatment, not given a chance to live. And so we think they need land to call their own, clean, safe drinking water to have, food to put in their belly, shelter, so we build homes, and then healthcare so that they can live and survive sickness, and then education, and then after that, sustainable livelihoods, right? Or all together. So we're in the quote unquote nonprofit business of creating opportunity. We say opportunity is greater than charity. Charity can be great, but opportunity is just always better. And so for things like war, famine, natural disaster, people with disabilities who cannot help themselves, it's like, yeah, charity, like do that. But people facing extreme poverty or even extreme oppression, if you sit down and have conversations, ask questions, they make suggestions, you will hear they don't want to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. They want a real way out. And a lot of NGOs come in and see them in this hole of poverty, and they throw them a bottle of water. And instead, they could gather some of the resources that are at our fingertips and jump down into the trenches with them, and like maybe educate them a bit on how to build a ladder out of that hole of poverty. That they would build the ladder. They want to, they ask to, but if only given the opportunity of a handout, they'll take the handout. They'll settle for that. But it can be very disempowering whenever they're asking for a hand up, to stand on their own 2 feet and have a fighting chance.
And what's even more, I mean, that's so well put and so important for people to understand about how this all works. I mean, I think what is particularly special to me is that, you know, as I think you've gotten across today, but you've gotten across to me in the past, which is it's also preposterous to think that you guys are just teaching them, because you've learned
so
as much or more from the Pygmy people.
I'll tell you what I've
resilience.
learned. Yeah, resilience, community. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's a Swahili proverb.
Beautiful.
If another proverb that I learned there is, and I take this into my recovery, if there is no enemy within, the opponent on the outside can do us no harm. If there is no enemy within, the enemy on the outside can do us no harm. Talk about spiritual work there, right?
That's as Jungian as it gets. That's the mystic mantra.
And I've learned so much. And you know what's funny is where I've learned the most, probably in all my life, is sitting around a fire, sitting on a log or around some trees, and we're doing it now. And
this is on brand for Justin.
Yeah, sometimes, belly laughing on my side with my cheeks hurting, with people I can or can't speak the same language of, but we have the same language of the heart, language of the soul. And everyone's just wanting to be loved, and they love each other so well. I think fathers among the Pygmy people, I think there's a legit study, or at least it was in The Guardian, saying that they're the best fathers in the world.
Wow.
And that they hold their children more than at least 50% of the time. It's like, whoa, talk about a different kind of culture, right? You're a dad, and you're a great father. I've seen it, and I've seen him, and I've seen how y'all love each other and act with each other and how you care for him. And it's beautiful. But you think about walking into...
That's what models like live up to, for sure.
Walk into a community where,
50% of the men are holding,
Yeah, that's why there's some pictures of me holding kids that I think...
50%'s a little high.
Isn't it? But look at the spine of my book. That's there because the publisher thought, right, it's me holding a kid. Oh, the front of it's me holding 2 kids, right? And...
Justin has less hair in the cover.
Right. But that's because they're used to it, and it's part of their culture, and they'll put the kids in your hands. But I've learned so much from them, and they've given me a great life to live because I have found purpose through service. And for me, purpose, and if you want to overcome, find some purpose. And people will say things. I don't think we often give the universe a chance, a real opportunity to show us what to do. I'm not saying the clouds will part and the voice of God will come through, or that you'll have a vision.
You might not have a vision of a jungle, but that's
why not?
Okay. It comes in a variety of ways.
A variety of ways, and most of the time through people. Through real conversations where you actually take some time and slow down and sit and have conversations. And for me, if I relate it back to fighting, like to the casual eye or casual fan, they think it's the person with the strongest muscles who usually wins, or strongest cardio.
Those people haven't watched Bruce Lee movies.
Yeah. But I truly believe it's the person with the strongest reasons that usually wins. And so in all of our lives, we can stack our reasons, find our reasons to overcome, or to put love and compassion in action, to take time to prioritize that. Because if you really look inward in the quiet places of our heart or soul or mind, oftentimes at the back of our mind, we're thinking, I think I can make a difference, or I hope I can make a difference, but how would I ever volunteer here or there or wherever? Or where's my place in society? It's like those things, like let's try to consciously move them from the back of our mind to the forefront, at least to the middle. And like, let's take some time and see what our heart is guiding us to do. And what I really think it's guiding us to do is to make a meaningful contribution, to make a meaningful impact. And oftentimes we count ourselves out and we don't give ourselves a fighting chance because we just get sucked into the distractions or to the, I gotta do this or I gotta do that, or this is what culture and society tells me I've got to do. Instead of being like, no, like that person over there, like I'm going to go make their day because I've got 5 minutes. Or I've got
kind of like you're making me think of like the War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, like the false beliefs are like at war with you, actually. And it's kind of, to me, what you're getting across is kind of like the war of service or the war of kind of contribution. It's actually just overcoming those hesitations.
Yeah.
To say, I'm not Justin Wren. I can't help it. It's like,
but why hesitate, right? Just like we were talking about that. Sometimes
Justin used to be behind the Dairy Queen throwing the Dr. Pepper costume in the dumpster. And now, a few years later, but not too long after, 10 years you're in Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. 10 years later.
10 years later, this guy is called the one who loves us by an enslaved people. So it's quite the inspiration, brother.
Yeah. I sometimes think about what if, and it was actually my mom that brought this up. My mom said she was proud of me and she's been very sweet and kind. And
she is proud of you?
Yeah.
That's so
I still have her saved in my phone as best mom ever since I was 16 years old. It's been the same. My mom,
most of my first comment for a long time on anything that I did online would be like,
that's
this
beautiful.
Is great, Mom.
I love it.
And now I'm just like back in the day I was like, well, my mom now it's like the joke, It's like, oh, well, my mom likes it. And
well, she
sold
reminded
some
me
copies of my book. It was on my mom's nightstand first.
Yes. I love it. Thank you for good moms.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And I really am grateful for her. She reminded me one time saying, and Amy's done this too, but what if you would have been successful? What if you would have been successful at taking your life? Like what wouldn't have happened? And
the It's a Wonderful Life exercise, the famous movie with Jimmy Stewart, the Christmas story.
I haven't seen it in a while.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I still get choked up at the end on a certain line, which I'll share in a later podcast. But he has a suicide attempt. And the angel, Clarence, jumps into the river before he does, and he saves the angel character.
Wow.
And the angel character comes with this idea to say, oh, I can just show him what the town of Medford Falls would be like if he didn't exist. Yeah, and it's a profound transformation to see how much impact that we do make.
Have you ever read a book called The Butterfly Effect by Andy Andrews?
I know it's the Ashton Kutcher movie, right? Or
it's different.
No, I haven't.
There's a book called The Butterfly Effect, and it's super small. And Amy liked it, but I love it. And it's short. It's like a 20-minute read. And it's pictures and one-liners and other things, but short little stories. And I think it goes along with the quote, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try to sleep in a closed room with a mosquito. Because there's all these moments in this book that we track back to one person and another person. Was it this person or was it that person? Was it this person? Was it really that person or was it the person before them? And you see all this stuff of like, lives being changed and countries being founded and inventions
Massive,
being made and
unpredictable impacts.
yeah, from like one person that impacted that person. And it's like, whoa, like what if one of these kids from the Pygmy communities like ends up being the person that saves us from something, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
finds the cure of cancer or leads the people group to like not me doing it, but I'm thinking of Otu, and he's the king's son and he's the prince and he's had challenges, but he also like people look to him already, and it's like, so you know what we're gonna do is love on him and invest in him and get him some leadership training, and he's going to English classes and he's wanting his people to be educated, and that's one of the last excuses, at least in Uganda and in Congo, of why they don't have representation on a governmental level. It's like, wait, this is the oldest people group on earth. Like, at least a lot of anthropologists think they're probably the oldest surviving people group.
Like Homo sapiens.
Yeah,
or
like
whatever,
10 to 15,000 years old, or older. And so it's like they should have representation, and so let's find a way to get it for them.
Let's learn from them.
Yeah, exactly. In the name of sustainability, the most sustainable people in the world were kicked out of the rainforest. That's like, what? You got to be kidding me.
It's the cruelest of ironies.
So if people feel led and want to support, you said this at a break, it's easy. If you want to start making an impact, a small but huge one is like you can give $5 a month or $25 a month, $40 a month to Fight for the Forgotten. And we have a monthly giving club. It's called Fight Club. And maybe the first rule of Fight Club is you do talk about Fight Club. I don't know. But, or that you give some small amount that you can, that, exchange 1 cup of coffee to give. Because in July.
How efficient are you guys?
We hope that we're going to start breaking ground on a hospital and school in July. I mean, that's
insane.
That, like,
I was kind of giving you a little hardball, but I know it's extremely high because there's some nonprofits
that barely give anything
that are like,
I think we give
9%.
Yeah, in between a given year, and we're a small nonprofit, but over 83%, over 87%,
incredible.
Over 90% sometimes, and it just depends on the given year. But we're trying to become a more sustainable model, and that would be from people joining our monthly giving club, and we're trying to find donors that would someday cover 100% of our operating cost. But again, sometimes like that hardball I get for most things. And for us, I just think everything we do goes to contribute to the cause. Like Zoe, our in-country director, director of operations, like her pay is actually small, but like 100% of what she does is projects. And so like her salary, like we can't do it without her.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's
the team is extremely efficient.
Yeah,
it's a small team, and you guys all do incredible work. I've seen a lot of the footage. We shot an interview a few months ago, and I learned a lot about FFTF.org
or fightfortheforgotten.org
or fightfortheforgotten.org. It's extremely noble and profound, and yeah, man, I just really appreciate what you do. It's I've had a humble contribution to some of the food bank work in town for years, and but I've kind of been off of it for a little while. I had a baby, and I'm now I'm going to start bringing him, which I'm really excited about. But it's you're just you're a walking reminder of really I've been wanting to read this quote
awesome.
all the interview. It's
Read it.
From Rabindranath Tagore, who was the first Pulitzer Prize winner from India. He was a poet, and he said, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." is this nice little
Can you
triplet.
do it one more time?
I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy.
Absolutely.
Isn't that good?
Yes, that is so good. If I could remind myself or anyone listening, sometimes I think, there's another quote, comparison is the thief of joy. And that's true. And I think oftentimes it's because we compare up or out, and we don't really zoom out enough to see how, if you have the opportunity to listen to a podcast on some smart device, like, you're richer than 90% of the world, at least 90%. And like, we have it so made. I get to go speak to these engineers in Washington, D.C., and I'm thinking, like, they are the unsung heroes of society. Yet I talked to them yesterday, and their pain point is they can't attract young people to take up engineering. And it's like, man, have we forgot how, we have these roads and we have this clean water, and that we can turn a tap and it can be hot or cold, and that we can click a button and the AC goes down to 68 if we want it to, or lower. And I'm a guy that has a cold plunge and a sauna, and honestly, that's one of the best things I can do for my mental health. And I need to do that, so I'm charged up so that I can go do stuff. But I don't take the clean water that's in that cold tub for granted. It's like, man, like, we are so blessed. We are so, so blessed, and we have such a capacity to serve. We just do.
Beautifully put. And to the point earlier, it's the best drug.
Yeah.
The other drugs, they make you feel bad.
Yeah. They
make you see through the mirage. They make you feel the pain eventually. If you're struggling with either, having bad experiences with drugs or having some mental health challenges, like you said earlier, this stuff has saved your life.
Yeah, and
not only are you serving other people, but it gives you all these incredible energy and momentum, and you're this walking source.
Thanks, man. Well, while we sit by a river, I've started to try to stop thinking of myself as just a container or a vessel, if that makes sense, like a cup. People say, fill up your cup before you pour out, or you pour out and you got to fill back up and everything else. And now I agree with that to a sense and a term, but like, being alongside the Congo River or this river, it's like, no, connect to that source and just be a river, and like, let it flow in and flow out. And like, just, if you stay connected to that source, I think it's love. Just stay connected to source and let it flow through you. And then you don't have to disconnect and pour out and then be empty. I've been in that cycle where you give, and you don't have anything else to give, and you're almost burnt out or have compassion fatigue or whatever. And what I realized was I stopped staying connected. So just like, connect to that source that is a mighty effing river that never runs dry. Well, I love you, man.
Yeah, love you, brother. Thank you so much.
We love the listeners.
Man.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us.
It's almost too much. Like, can you lower the bar a little bit for a second?
What if there is no bar?
Too inspiring, Justin.
What if there is no bar?
The barlessness.